Welcome back to the shop. This is Jake Beeman with Golden Fox Farms. This is our second entry in our shop repair series. We're going to look at fixing this old smoker today. This is a pretty nice little smoker. It only has one minor problem. It kind of impacts being able to use this thing because it's one thing for it to have it moving around. It's another when the bellows no longer matches up with the air inlet hole. So we got to get this thing reaffixed to this thing using methods they didn't use at the factory because this thing was originally stamp welded together and those welds failed. So we'll take this apart and show you how you can do a quick, easy repair on it. So what all we got going wrong with this thing? We have the actual cage holder. The bellows mount is loose. The bellows itself is also missing some screws from its attachment points. And the cover, this gripper thingy as well, it's seen better days. So we'll take this thing apart, examine each one of those problems individually, and get this thing put back together. The first thing I'm going to do is take this cap off, just to make this easier to work on. And this is held on just by this little curlicue here. And I'm going to bend that out just enough to get this off of there. The next thing to mess with is this cage, which with that curlicue pressed in and freed, we should be able to more or less slide up and over that. I'm going to turn this way and get a little more clearance to get off of that thing. There's that free. Okay, this thing, we got to get this just plucked out already, and then we can mess with reattaching it after the fact. Oh, well, that answers that one. Okay, so now I need to get these out of these so we can bung these things up. All right, so that's free. All right. Oh, we'll use these. These screws are the same heads on them. Now I'm going to shorten them using this thing, and the way you do that, because we only need like little stubs in this instance, is you line up the screw with this device, and then you can shear it by just pinching it. And that shortens the screw for you. Keep your threads intact. The shorter these are, the less they're going to get in the way with use and maintenance and everything else. So you do want to right size screws where you can when it makes sense to. Alrighty. Now the force that's applied on this thing is a pulling force. So I'm going to put fender washers on the inside to help stiffen this. Okay, that's going together. Let's do the other side. Fender. Lock nut. Or lock washer, rather. Oh, that's the perfect size one. What was that when I was first doing this? And a nut. Alright. And we'll see how tight we can get this before I need to get a wrench out to hold the back of it. Quite often you can just hold the nut still enough for it to work. It bit me! That rough cut edge of that screw caught my fingertip. All right, that should be stronger than it ever was. And that shouldn't go anywhere ever. So this is done. We can set this aside. So let's start by getting all this stuff off. Okay. And this is what we need to mess with. This is what holds the bellows to the fire pot, okay? And I know this thing sits roughly like, oops, wrong way. Well, actually, yeah, it's just inside out. It's going to roughly line up like this. So my thought is side screws down here and a central screw up here should be enough to hold this thing stable. So we'll prep by getting the screw holes in this thing first, and then we'll translate those onto this thing and get the holes in this, and then do pass-through bolts to hold it all together. Now anytime you're drilling on some metal, this thing's going to make life a lot easier. This is a center punch. It is a spring-loaded punch that'll put little dings in this stuff that'll keep your bit from rattling around. So, since this is the hook end, we know this is the bottom. The bottom, I wanted to have those screws here and here so they're not on top of this piece. So we'll do one how about there and one about there. You know, I'll go ahead and keep it for to the bottom, to the top, just because this thing's going to wobble if we don't do that. And I'm going to redo that on a harder surface to get those really set in there. All right, so let's pin them again. This will work a lot better this time. There we go. There we go. There's another one. And there's another one. Now I'm probably going to use some machine screws that are convenient for me because I have them already. Alright, I'm going to use some slightly beefier screws than I normally would. I'm going to use these things. These are Allen screws. And the upside about an Allen screw is how you tighten them. It's an Allen screw. It means it has this socket cap on it. This is going to be a lot easier to tighten inside that smoker barrel than trying to get a screwdriver down there. So we'll use these, which also means I need a hole big enough for this. It's a 1/4 inch screw, so we need a 1/4 inch hole. Now we need to get this stuff clocked together. There's one. Two. All right. There's no real mystery why this thing came apart. This thing is so flexible, the spot welds just didn't survive. All right. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is get this cage bolted onto this pot. And the way I'm going to do that is passing these screws like this through there, because this way I can get an Allen key on the back of this in there to tighten it, and I have this end to work to get nuts and bolts on. Now I already have one threaded through. I already have that one threaded through, so we'll go ahead and get a lock washer and nut on there so she doesn't go anywhere And we'll use that one to kind of get the other ones lined up and forced into place. We might find out we need to help our holes out a little bit with alignment. We'll deal with that when it happens. That's not an uncommon occurrence. I would like to get that slightly more starty than it is, but that's what it's going to be for right now. And I'll go from the top down, mostly so if there's a burr or something to cut myself on, the screw is going to be in the way to absorb that first. Oh, come on. Speaking of burrs, we have burrs in the way, so let's just take this in here and rid ourselves of that problem. There we go. Lock washer and nut. It's okay if these are sitting cattywampus now. Once we horse it all down, it'll behave. And really, it's fine for now because that gives us the ability to move things and get the other ones aligned. I go into the back and get the Allen key in place. And I'm not going to dump truck them until everybody's at least partly on. Also, by doing it this way, I've reduced the amount of hardware that's inside the fire pot space, so when we try to get our grill back in there, we should still be able to get that into place. That one is super stiff for whatever reason. All right, now I'm going to get them all dump trucked. Now this is pretty thin metal, so don't go freaking nutso, but you do want it stiff. Okay, now we'll reattach the bellows. Now, they put these screws in with it assembled. And you can tell because the screws kind of splay in. Now, this side was intact, so we'll use two of the same screw that came out to put it back together. Literally using the same screws that came out. And I'm just going to get it tight. Not tight, I'm just going to get it snug. Because if it's tight, I'm not going to be able to fidget into position the way I want it to be. So that's those two. Let's do these two. Now, the top one on this was missing because it pulled out. So what I'm going to do, instead of using the number 6 screw the manufacturer used, I'm going to use a number 8 screw, because this will still bite the wood that's left in that hole. I'll do the Phillips head one first, just because that fatter screw I have is a slotted, and it's just a little bit harder to get them to behave when putting things together. You really need to kind of get it all lined up first, because you can't rely on your screwdriver to hold it for you. At least not near as much. And since this is the last one and everyone should be more or less in the spot they're going to work in, I'm going to take them all snug. Our hole lines up with that, so that's definitely an improvement. I might say it needs to just tweak a little over, but I mean, that's a pretty good sign it's lined up, isn't it? And our cap. Hook our cap back on. And then we'll pull that coil back tight. And that is one fixed smoker. We had one more thing that I omitted because I just didn't catch it until I set it off already. And that is the bottom plate doesn't quite fit anymore because of those screw heads that are in the way. So what we'll do is we'll just knock off the back of it. And this will still be plenty intact to function for what it's supposed to do. There we go. All righty. I'll take a file across that just so no one catches a finger on that in 6 months and gets mad at me. Good enough. Thanks for joining us. Good luck and happy beaking.